Hey guys, it's Tom here, coming at you with another movie review. Today I'll be talking about the movie Watchmen from 2009. It's a 6-year-old movie. Um, I This movie kind of evokes a lot of. I mean, it gets a lot of strong reactions from people. I think to this day, if you ask somebody about the Watchmen movie, you might uh, get a rant because a lot of people hate this movie. A few people love this movie. I don't love it, but I do like it quite a bit. I'm a big supporter of this movie, big apologist. As I mentioned before in my X-Men review, I love comic books, and I did read the Watchmen graphic novel. I read it, I think, like a decade ago or something. My roommate gave me two graphic novels for one of my birthdays. He gave me Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns, which are those two are basically considered the best like superhero graphic novels the West has ever produced. So that was quite a gift, and those two really are amazing graphic novels. And we're kind of with Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice, the upcoming uh, Batman Superman movie. We're kind of getting. I heard it takes stuff. It takes elements from The Dark Knight Returns. Plus, they've made a cartoon version of The Dark Knight Returns for home video, and they released it in two parts, and then they combined it together, and you could buy it as one like 3-hour movie, which I do have on DVD, and I might actually review that. It actually wouldn't be a bad idea. But I don't know why I'm talking about that. I should be talking about Watchmen, but Watchmen is a great comic. It may be the best superhero, like American style superhero story ever told. It was written by Alan Moore. He was British, and he's kind of a reputation for being a weird, cranky guy and he doesn't like when they make movies out of his comic books. He's not a fan of that. But yeah, Watchmen came out in 2009, directed by Zack Snyder, who actually is doing was it Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice, and he did Man of Steel, and he's doing a lot of superhero movies. I'm not really going to talk about the plot. I mean, you know, if you're watching this, you probably know the plot. Let's see. Yeah, some people thought that the graphic novel was unfilmable. Like, it's not even worth trying to make a movie out of because it's just too difficult to adapt. And they might be kind of right. I mean, you're never because making movies is really hard, and there's a lot of politics involved, and you're probably never going to get like a perfect Watchmen movie because of the amount of there's no complete. It's like movie by committee design. There's so many people involved. You can't really get a singular vision, and that's really what it takes, and that's not how Hollywood makes most of their movies these days. Plus, it's a big budget movie. You really need a lot of money to make a complete Watchmen movie to really realize it on the screen. But I think this movie, it's not perfect, and it's definitely not as good as the comic. I mean, there's just really, but who was expecting that? I don't think anybody was. But I think, given the limitations, this movie is about. This is probably as good as it gets, as we're going to get from Hollywood of a commercial version of Watchmen. So I like this movie. I don't understand why people hate it so much. I don't. The movie seems to me kind of a love letter to the comic book. It takes great pains to. I mean, it's very faithful to the source material, and you get I think most of the charm and the appeal of the characters and stuff. From the comic comes to the movie. And there is one big major change from the comic, and that's regarding the film's climax. There's something that they changed, an explanation. Yeah, I'm not. In fact, I'm not even. I'm just stop there. But there's one big thing they changed. Anyone who's read the comic and seen the movie knows what I'm talking about. But that one thing aside, which they had, I think they basically had to change that. It's really. Even in the comic, that's probably like the one thing people question the most. I mean, the Watchmen is as critically approved as it can possibly be, but of that's like the one fault people have with the comic, is that one thing. It really was kind of a WTF moment, and I'm happy that they changed it in the movie. I understand why they did that, but that one thing and I mean, they omitted some stuff because they had to, because it's Watchmen is really the graphic novel. It's a dense work, and there's a lot of stuff in it, and you just can't have everything. I don't think, because a lot of the stuff, it's not just it's a comic, but it's also, there's like documents in the graphic novel where it's just like little stories about the characters where you learn about like the background, and then there was also a side thing where there was like this pirate comic, which to me seemed kind of irrelevant. I don't know why that was in the comic, but you know that's they cut that out too. I mean, they kind of had to, but they did. I think they made a cartoon out of it, and they sold it on DVD when Watchmen was in theaters as part of the big push for all the Watchmen stuff. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, some people say they should have changed more to try to adapt Watchmen to make it a better movie. I think I understand you have to change things when you adapt stuff from books or movies. I mean, not movies. I mean, you take something from a book or a video game or a comic book and you turn it into a movie, you have to do that. I mean, change is part of the adaptation process. But I think it's important to stick to the spirits of the material. And I think being faithful is generally a good thing. So people saying, oh, this movie is too faithful to the comic book, I don't think that's a problem. I think that's a strength, not a weakness. Especially since I think it works as a movie. And if you're gonna if you're gonna water down what Watchmen is, why even call it Watchmen at that point? Why not just make something else and then say this was influenced by Watchmen? They could have done that, but if you want a Watchmen movie, I want to see, the comic book up on the screen. My favorite film critic, Roger Ebert, who died 3 or 4 years ago now. He when Watchmen came out, he gave it a 4-star review, and I don't know if I agree with that completely, but he's close at least. I think it's a really good movie, a high quality movie. They really took great pains to adapt it, and I think you see the love and the tender care on the screen. And even if you hate this movie, I think you kind of have to give Zack Snyder credit for trying to make a Watchmen movie. It's really, it's a really epic story, and it's a unique story, and it's hard to adapt. I mean, even if it's not impossible, it's very challenging. And I think even if people who hate the movie have to kind of give it credit for just being a hell of a shot at it. I mean, a massive undertaking. This big budget movie that just tries it. It just has the balls to try to make a movie out of this really weird comic book. And the movie is, because I watched it a few nights ago, it really is visually striking. It's just kind of a feast for the eyes. You really, I don't know. You could almost watch it with like the sound turned off and still, you'd probably still be glued to it because it's just visually appealing. I remember when the movie came out, I had a friend who was also, a fan of the comic book. He hadn't seen the movie yet, and he asked me, does this movie live up to the comic book? And at the time, I told him, I don't know, because I wasn't sure if it worked or not, because when I was watching it, because I was familiar with the comic, I read the comic a couple times, or twice at least, yeah. And the thing is, when I was watching it, I was very conscious of, oh yeah, I remember this scene from the comic book, but I couldn't watch the movie without remembering the comic, so I wasn't quite sure whether or not someone who hadn't read the material would say, oh yeah, this, because I knew what the movie was trying to do, and that made me, because I was conscious of it, I wasn't sure if it was actually doing it, and I think the best person to determine whether or not Watchmen works as a movie would be someone who hasn't read the graphic novel. And I can't be that person because I read the comic. I think that's still true. I think ultimately get someone who hasn't read the comic, show them the movie, and say, does this work as a movie? Here's the thing. I think it does work. it's good enough. It really, I mean, there's it's a flawed movie for sure, but it still works. Maybe it works as well as it can. I don't know. Yeah, I have grown a fondness for this movie and an admiration for it. It's a massive undertaking, and it achieves. I think it does achieve most of its goals. I mean, if you want to see a Watchmen movie, here it is. Zack Snyder did it, and some brave executives at Warner Brothers decided to fund a big budget R-rated superhero movie, which is kind of ballsy for them because that's, most big budget movies don't have an R rating because then you're limiting your audience. And they want, and if it's a big budget movie, they want as many people to see it as possible so they can make as much money. So I'm kind of, I think we were lucky to get an R-rated Watchmen movie, and I think it's a pretty good one. I did see the movie in theaters, but it wasn't until years later I bought it on DVD. So I don't remember, because the DVD I have is the director's cut, which I think adds 15 or 20 minutes. I don't know, but it's a little longer. So I'm not sure that the differences between the theatrical version and the director's cut, although I'm guessing there's probably more violence, more blood. And I do know there was a love scene between Night Owl and Silk Spectre on Night Owl's aircraft. It's called, well, he calls it Archie, which is his nickname for it. Its full name is Archimedes, which I think was Merlin's pet owl, because he's a fan of mythology. But the love scene, because when I was watching the movie, it seemed a little graphic. I was a little surprised. It was kind of a little bit of a long scene, considering most love scenes in movies are short, or they're pretty short. And this one went on a little long and seemed a little intense. And I doubt it was like that in the theatrical version. So other than that one scene, I'm not really sure what the other changes were. So if you know what they added in the director's cut, maybe you could leave a comment. I'd be curious to find out. Again, this movie is flawed, but Snyder did a good job. It's a high quality movie, and it successfully carries over most of the charm of the comic. And I think it's worth watching, not once, but multiple times. I love the violence, the dark nature, the over-the-top elements, and the courage required to tackle such a unique story, and the love it exhibits for the source material. Again, it has an almost kind of tender attention for detail. I mean, you kind of feel the love for the source material. Snyder really wanted to bring the movie to life, and I think he did a good enough job. Again, it's not a perfect movie. When it comes to Watchmen, you're probably never going to get a perfect movie, but it's close enough. It does justice to the graphic novel, and at the end of the day, that's really all you want it to do. Some other flaws. Rorschach, his voice in the movie works some of the time because he talks like I'm Rorschach. Yeah. He talks. It's like the Christian Bale Batman voice from the Nolan Batman movies. So his voice, it works sometimes. Other times it seems like a bit much. The comic is very dense, and again the movie, other than the one main plot element it changed, it omitted a bunch of stuff like I forget is it Tales of the Black Freighter or that pirate story that's in the comic. They just cut that out. And the thing is, I didn't really mind them cutting that out because it seemed kind of irrelevant to me when I was reading the comic. But they also cut out the graphic novel featured kind of like articles and psych profiles of some of the characters, where you get to learn more about the characters. And the thing is, these these text articles in the comic really added humanity and a level of characterization to the characters. You kind of got to look into their heads a little more. But the thing is, for the movie, all that stuff is gone because you can't. They're not going to insert Word documents into the movie because it's a movie. It's not a book. But so you lose some of the background of the characters, but there's still. I think they boil them down, and the characters you see in this movie are basically the characters from the comic. So you're not losing much. Yeah, it's close enough. Uh, I like this movie. I know a lot of people hated it. They hated it with a passion. But here's the thing: this movie, you know, people who make movies, they always say they don't want to make a movie that makes people indifferent. They want something that evokes a reaction, and this movie has really done that. People feel strongly about it. They either love it or they hate it. Generally, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say like, "Oh, that was okay," or that was. They usually have a strong opinion about it, so that's a good compliment for the movie. I like this movie, which I think I've already said a couple times. But no, it's good, and it's worth watching again. Maybe if you haven't seen it in a while, you could watch it again, or reread the comic. Or they released sequel comics. It was like before Watchmen, which I bought a few of them, but I didn't end up reading them. But I heard the sequel comic, which is actually a prequel, were pretty good. But yeah, that's my review of Watchmen. I'm going to post a link to my written review, which is most of what I just said. I'm also going to post a link to the film's trailer. So thank you for watching, and have a nice day.